In the days when the baobab trees were young and the rivers sang their own songs, there lived a skilled drummer named Kofi in the village of Adansamanso. Kofi was known throughout the land not just for his rhythms, but for the magical drum his grandfather had left him, a drum carved from the wood of a lightning-struck iroko tree and covered with the hide of a leopard that had died of old age. This was no ordinary drum. It was said that when played by hands pure of heart, it could speak the truth that lay hidden in people's souls. Now, Kofi was a humble man who used his drum only for celebrations, weddings, harvests, and the naming ceremonies of newborn children. He lived quietly with his wife Amma and their daughter Akasua, tending his small farm and playing his drum when the village needed joy. But in those days, the kingdom was ruled by King Osa, a man who had grown suspicious and bitter with age. The king had once been fair and wise, but whispers from his chief advisor, a cunning man named Quame, had poisoned his mind. Quame told the king that the people plotted against him, that they mocked him in secret, that they wished for a new ruler. None of this was true, but Quame spoke these lies because he himself coveted the throne. One day, the king announced a great festival. All the villages in the kingdom were to send their finest performers to the palace. The best dancer, the best singer, and the best drummer would each receive a bag of gold. But there was something strange about this invitation. It came with a warning. Any performer who displeased the king would be thrown into the dungeon beneath the palace, where no light ever reached. The people of Adansamanso gathered in the village square to discuss who should represent them. The young men looked at Kofi. "You must go," said the village elder, his white beard touching his chest. "Your drum is famous across the land. No one plays like you." But Kofi shook his head. "The king has changed. I have heard stories from travelers. He sees betrayal in every shadow. What if my drumming displeases him?" His wife Amma placed her hand on his shoulder. "Then we will manage without the gold. We have our farm, our health, our daughter. That is wealth enough." But young Akasua, who was 12 years old and brave beyond her years, spoke up. "Father, you've always taught me that we must stand for truth even when we're afraid. Your drum speaks truth. Maybe that's what the king needs to hear." Kofi looked at his daughter's earnest face and felt shame at his fear. She was right. He had a gift, and perhaps it was meant for this moment. So Kofi made the long journey to the capital city, his precious drum strapped to his back. When he arrived, he found the palace courtyard filled with performers from every corner of the kingdom. There were acrobats who could flip through the air like birds, dancers whose feet barely touched the ground, and drummers with instruments decorated with cowrie shells and brass bells. But Kofi noticed something else. The performers' faces were tight with worry. They had all heard the rumors about the king's dungeons. When the festival began, the king sat on his throne like a statue carved from stone. His face showed no pleasure, no interest, only a cold watchfulness. Beside him, Quame whispered constantly in his ear, and with each whisper the king's frown deepened. The dancers performed first. A beautiful young woman from the coastal region moved like water flowing over stones, her movements so graceful that even the birds seemed to pause their singing to watch. But when she finished, the king merely waved his hand dismissively. "She dances well enough," he said, "but I saw her eyes shift toward the guards. Surely she was counting them, planning an attack." Before anyone could protest, the guards had seized the poor dancer and dragged her away. The crowd gasped, but no one dared speak. Next came a singer with a voice like honey and sunlight mixed together. He sang of the harvest, of love, of the beauty of the kingdom. But Quame leaned to the king's ear and whispered, and the king's eyes narrowed. "He sings of the harvest but mentions no gratitude to his king," Osa declared. "He speaks of love but not loyalty. This man is a rebel dressed in a singer's cloth." And the singer too was taken away. One by one, the performers tried to please the king, and one by one they were condemned for imagined offenses. The king saw conspiracy in every gesture, treason in every word. The pile of gold sat untouched beside the throne, for no one had yet pleased this bitter ruler. Finally, it was time for the drummers. Kofi watched as 3 men performed before him, each one trying desperately to satisfy the king. Each one was hauled away for reasons that made no sense. One for drumming too loudly, "He tries to drown out my thoughts." Another for drumming too softly, "He shows me no respect." And a third for pausing between rhythms, "He hesitates because he plots while he plays." Then Kofi's name was called. He walked to the center of the courtyard, his magical drum in his hands. He could feel his heart pounding like a second drum inside his chest. He thought of Amma and Akasua waiting at home. He thought of the innocent performers now suffering in the dungeon. He thought of his daughter's words, "Your drum speaks truth." Kofi closed his eyes and began to play. At first, he played the rhythm of the kingdom itself, the steady, strong beat of a land at peace, of people working in harmony, of children laughing and elders sharing wisdom. It was a rhythm everyone recognized, a rhythm of the way things used to be. But as he played, something extraordinary happened. The drum began to speak, not in words that the ear could hear, but in truths that the heart could understand. The rhythm shifted, showing the kingdom as it was now, confused, fearful, divided. The beat stuttered and stumbled like a once strong dancer who had forgotten the steps. The crowd leaned forward, mesmerized. Even the guards stopped their watchful packing to listen. Then Kofi's hands moved faster and the drum showed the reason for the kingdom's suffering. The rhythm split into two competing beats, one representing the true voice of the people, steady and loyal, and another, sneaky and shifting, wrapping around the first like a snake around a branch. This second rhythm was a lie, a poison, a false voice whispering false things. King Osai sat forward on his throne, his eyes wide. For the first time in months, he truly listened. Kofi's drum then did something remarkable. It began to tell the king's own story, the rhythm of a young prince who had loved his people, who had ruled with wisdom and kindness, who had made the kingdom prosper. Then the rhythm darkened, showing the slow drip of poison, the whispered doubts, the growing paranoia, the transformation of a good man into a tyrant. And throughout it all there was another rhythm, the gentle, persistent beat of truth trying to be heard beneath the lies. As Kofi played, tears began to stream down the king's face. He was seeing himself clearly for the first time in years. He was remembering who he used to be and recognizing what he had become. Then the drum revealed one final truth. The sneaky, lying rhythm that had poisoned everything, it came from a source close to the king. Kofi's hands moved across the drum and everyone in the courtyard understood. The lies came from the chief advisor. Quaim leaped to his feet, his face twisted with rage. "This is witchcraft. This drummer seeks to turn you against me, my king. He is the traitor. Seize him." But King Osai held up his hand. His face, which had been hard as stone for so long, had softened with understanding and sorrow. "No," he said quietly, "let him finish." Kofi played the final sequence. His hands flew across the drum, showing what could be: a kingdom healed, a king restored, truth triumphant over lies, light over darkness. The rhythm built and built until it felt like the very sky would open with joy. When Kofi's hands finally stilled, silence filled the courtyard. It was the silence of a people waking from a long nightmare. King Osai stood from his throne and walked slowly down the steps until he stood before Kofi. The king, who had condemned so many, now knelt before the humble drummer. "Your drum has spoken what my heart knew but my mind refused to believe," the king said, his voice breaking. "I have been a fool, worse, I have been cruel to innocent people because I listened to lies instead of truth." He turned to Quaim and his voice became steel. "Seize him," he commanded the guards. "Let him occupy the dungeons he helped me fill with good people." Quaim tried to run, but the guards were faster. As they dragged him away, he screamed curses and threats, but no one listened. The time for his poison had passed. The king then commanded that all the performers be released from the dungeon and brought to the courtyard. When they emerged, blinking in the sunlight, many were weeping with relief. To each one, the king apologized personally, and to each one he gave not just a bag of gold but a royal pardon and his solemn promise that such injustice would never happen again. To Kofi, the king gave the greatest honor. "You have given me back my soul," he said. "Your drum speaks truth that words cannot capture. I ask you to stay in the palace to play at every council meeting so that truth will always be heard above the noise of politics and ambition." But Kofi shook his head gently. "Your Majesty, I am honored, but I am a simple farmer. My place is with my wife and daughter in Adansamanso. However, I will make you a promise. Whenever you truly need to hear the truth, send for me and I will come with my drum." The king smiled, the first genuine smile his people had seen in years. "Then that is what we shall do, and Kofi, take not just gold but my friendship, which is worth more than any metal." Kofi returned to his village a wealthy man, but more importantly, he returned as a hero. The story of the drum that spoke truth spread across the land. King Os, having learned his lesson, became once again the wise and just ruler he had been in his youth. He learned to listen not just with his ears but with his heart, to seek truth even when it was uncomfortable, and to surround himself with honest people rather than flattering ones. As for Kofi, he continued his quiet life, farming his land and playing his drum at celebrations. But whenever a messenger came from the palace with the king's seal, Kofi would pack his magical drum and make the journey to the capital. And each time he played, truth rang out clear and strong, keeping the kingdom on the path of justice. Years later, when Akasua was grown with children of her own, Kofi passed the drum to her just as his grandfather had passed it to him. "Remember," he told her, "this drum only speaks truth for those whose hearts are pure. Use it wisely, use it well, and use it always in the service of what is right." And so the drum was passed down through generations, speaking truth to power, reminding the mighty to be humble, and the humble that they possess a power mightier than any crown, the power of truth itself.